Hi guys, hope everything's going well for you. Hope you're having a good week so far. We have been looking at the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl thus far, and you also watched a video about kind of some of those things, and towards the end, part of it was talking about how America was trying to get itself out of the Great Depression. So we looked at kind of components that caused the Great Depression, and then how was America trying to get itself out. And you look at the situation, guys. 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt comes in as president after a just really rough presidency for Herbert Hoover. So if you remember, guys, Hoover was one of the key individuals for World War One, for America feeding its troops with the Food Administration. So he had this huge success during World War One. He was very, very big in helping feed Europe after World War One and helping assist Europe after World War One with all the destruction and mayhem of World War One. So he's a very, very popular individual. And then he becomes president. Market crashes. Great Depression sets in, and he is nobody's best friend then, right? So everybody loves him, and then all of a sudden, everybody hates him. Okay, so much so that the homeless people oftentimes they're kind of shanty towns, cardboard box towns. The people were living in that were homeless at the time. They would dub them Hoovervilles because of Herbert Hoover. So they really put a lot of blame on his shoulders. So Roosevelt, guys, comes in, wins the presidency. Um, the Congress and America was so ready for Roosevelt to take office, they couldn't wait for him to take office, that they actually moved up the inauguration. So it used to be in March, guys, and then they said, "Hey, that was too long to wait. We need to get new presidents in to solve these problems right away. We need to start this in January." Okay, so that was how much they were not pleased with Herbert Hoover, and how much they wanted Roosevelt to come in and institute his plans for fixing this problem. And so Roosevelt's going to come in and he's going to put into place what he called during the campaign the New Deal. And so this was, hey, this is how we're going to get out of the Great Depression. This is my plan for that. Okay, so one of the first things he does, guys, is he is going to come in and say, "Okay, Congress, I need you to work with me." Um, and so he starts laying down this New Deal. He starts coming up with legislation and forcing it through Congress, and they pass it at a pretty steady rate. This will become known as the first 100 days because during this time period, he really pushed a lot of his programs through and a big portion of his New Deal plan through. Another major step that he took right off the bat, guys, was he declared a bank holiday. So if you remember from the video, that was a big problem for the government was, oh shoot, nobody trusts the banks, nobody wants their money in the banks. That's kind of a cornerstone of our financial and economic systems here in the United States, guys, is the banking institutions. And so there's no money being put in the banks. The banks have no money to loan out, and they have to eventually close their doors. And so basically what Roosevelt guys does is he orders a bank holiday, is what he calls it. And this was inspired by the state of Michigan. They had done this with a certain amount of success, and he said, "Okay, I'm just going to do this with the whole country. I'm going to have every bank shut their doors." And so essentially what happens, guys, is March 9th, you have basically the government inspectors come through and inspect the financial health of the banks. And so it's just like a patient, just like a person, where a doctor comes through and gives you a clean bill of health and says, okay, you're good. So like for your guys' physicals, this is kind of what the government was doing with the banks, was looking at their books, looking at their financial figures and saying, okay, it's safe for you to put your money in this bank or not. And so that's kind of what they did. And by March 15th, so not long after, guys, 2/3 of the banks had reopened, which that's a big deal because now we can start to get those loans going again and get the economy going again. Another big thing that Roosevelt did, guys, was he passed the SEC. And you're going to notice there's a lot of letter combinations here, guys. So much so that the press is going to dub a lot of these programs from the New Deal by Roosevelt. They're going to call it alphabet soup. So you're certainly going to see a lot of these abbreviations, these letters. But the SEC stands for Securities and Exchange Commission. And they put this in place because, once again, was another big issue. Wall Street, right? You had these big time traders that said, there's a bubble, it's going to burst, and people had access to these big time traders, these big time stockbrokers had access to information that most regular people did not, and they were able to take advantage of that information. And so, really, the SEC is formed, guys, to crack down on insider trading, dishonesty, corruption on Wall Street. Some of these issues that help bring about the crashing of the stock market crash. Another big one for the banks, guys, for the New Deal that Roosevelt, kind of forced through with Congress, was the Glass-Steagall Act. And the Glass-Steagall Act, it's still in effect today. And basically, it created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC. And you guys have probably seen that on bank windows. It'll say, or bank commercials also, it says, FDIC, right? Member FDIC. And so FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, basically insures your money in the bank, just like State Farm insures your car or your home, right? Something bad happens, something breaks, you get into a wreck, they will help pay to fix your car, right? And depends on your insurance, your coverage, and all that. But basically, that's the idea, right? Is something bad happens, insurance is there to replace the things that are damaged that you own. So it's the same concept for the banks, that the federal government is saying, hey, if the bank loses your money, we will make sure you get that money back. Okay, the government will pay you that money. Now, obviously, there's limits to that. Back then, guys, they started out, I believe it was about $5,000 that the bank would insure, or that, excuse me, that the government would insure per account. Now it's much higher than that. But still, when you guys are raking in the dollars, making bank, you'll probably want to spread your wealth throughout several accounts just to make sure you're protected in that sense. Okay, so guys, he also passed two kind of key parts of this, one for industry, one for farmers. And so for industry, you had the Federal Emergency Relief Administration. So basically, guys, this was set up to fund a bunch of these agencies for the New Deal. Okay, all these New Deal agencies for relief from the Great Depression. That is what the Federal Emergency Relief Administration was set up for, was to fund those agencies. And it was headed up by someone very close to Roosevelt, which was Harry Hopkins. He was very, like I said, close to the president. He's going to serve him well throughout his presidency. He's going to play a big role during World War II for the president as well. Now, one of these agencies that the Federal Emergency Relief Administration was funding was the public works programs. And so the public works programs, guys, you had several different programs, but basically the whole idea, and this is the basis of Roosevelt's plan for the New Deal, which you have to be fair to Herbert Hoover, is what the government was trying to do to a certain degree already. And that was, we are going to put people back to work. So they didn't say, okay, we're going to give you a handout. They didn't say, okay, we feel sorry for you, here's a check. They said, we're going to put people back to work and they're going to earn a living for themselves. Okay, so it's kind of like that saying, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man how to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Okay, so they're saying we're not trying to give out handouts, we're trying to put people back to work. Okay, and so that's what they're going to try and do. So they create the Civil Works Administration, the CWA. Okay, so it's going to employ about 4.4 million Americans. They're going to build roads, they're going to build parks, airports, things like that. You also have the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, and what's cool about this, guys, is it targeted young Americans, okay, mostly young males. And so the thinking was, guys, so 18 to 25-year-olds, the thinking was a lot of these young men, they were having trouble getting jobs because a lot of these business owners that were still open were saying, well, I feel like I need to give this job to someone who's supporting a family. And on the flip side, a lot of the families are going, we can't afford to, feed you and house you and clothe you anymore. You're on your own. And so there are really a lot of young men at this time that are really struggling to find work because of those, they're struggling to find work, but they're also struggling to stay afloat because they also don't get to live at home anymore. They are not dependent on their parents. Their parents saying, hey, we can't afford to keep you. We got to take care of your little brothers and sisters. And so this was very smart, in my opinion. This was a great idea, guys, to say this is specifically for this age group of people. They stayed in camps, like I said, because they probably are mostly homeless. So they stayed in these camps. It's almost like summer camp. You're camping out under the stars. You're cooking your own meals on campfires. Um, they're doing a lot of planting of trees, digging ditches, building recreational areas. So that was a big, big deal. Okay, you also have agriculture. Like I said, that's the other thing they're trying to do is help agriculture because obviously they're suffering enough with the Dust Bowl and everything that's going on with that. So you have the creation of the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, or the AAA. So basically what they're trying to do, guys, they're trying to raise farm prices. They said, well, we can't really help you grow more crops and make more money that way, and we can't really impact the markets by making Russia lose wheat or whatever, so on and so forth. So they said, okay, we're going to reduce the amount of supply by basically paying farmers to plow under their wheat, plow under their cotton. They're going to round up livestock, shoot them, and burn them to lower the supply. Now, the shame about this, guys, is a lot of people are going hungry. A lot of people are watching this going, you couldn't have just given this food to people. So that was certainly seemed to be a flaw in the plan. Another way to help kind of rural areas, agriculture areas, guys, was the Tennessee Valley Authority. So remember, the Southeast, the South in general, but especially the Southeast, guys, it's still reeling from the Civil War. It's still reeling from Reconstruction. It's stunted. Its growth is stunted. So it's a bad, bad deal in the South. And so when the Great Depression sets in, it's way worse. It's hit way worse. So it's really rough there, guys. And so you have these 7 states. They're going to be impacted by the Tennessee Valley Authority. Basically, what's going to happen is they're going to build a hydroelectric dams, create electricity for the area, cheaper, more affordable electricity. They also, guys, helped farmers. They helped them figure out crop rotation and increase crop production. And it's still around today. So it still serves that region today.